Adirondack Bigfoot is a community built on experience. Today, I'm bringing in the experts. Dave. Dave's got 10 years of experience exploring the culture. So let's tune in, listen in, learn something, and stay tuned. All right, welcome to Adirondack Bigfoot. I'm Johnny. I'm here today with Dave. And Dave, if you want to give us a quick little introduction, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I live in now you live up in the Adirondacks, correct? Or
I
close
do.
to it?
Yep,
Nice.
Southern Adirondacks and Fort Ann.
Okay. I live in Bouckville, New York, which is a small town on Route 20 in between Madison and Morrisville.
Okay.
And I am about I'm thinking I'm a couple hours from the beginning of the Adirondacks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my son goes to a Christian camp up there that's on Scroon Lake, and that's
Yeah.
usually a 3 hour drive. So I'm about that far out.
Okay, that's great.
Uh, I'm married. I've been married for 22 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I have two kids. I have a 12-year-old son, and I have a daughter who's 11, and she is special needs. And as of 3 years ago, I became a stay-at-home dad, and which is a very challenging job.
Right. Yeah. I bet. You got a lot of work to do there at home, right?
Yeah, all the years I worked and my wife stayed home with the kids. There was often times, and she would text me at work, or I'd come home and she'd say, "Oh, it's been a stressful day, and
Right.
I just need some room to breathe." And I used to think, "Yeah, what's the big deal? You're home with two kids. That's like the
Right. Yeah.
best job ever." And then about a month into it, I was like, "Oh crap! I think I'm gonna go insane."
Yeah. Yeah. It's not the same, but similar. A few years ago, I started. I have a little bit of a work from home kind of job now, so I switched from full time, out in the field, to more of at home more often. Let's say, with
Yeah,
maybe 1 or 2 nights out a month, where before it was 3 or 4 nights a week. So work from home quite a bit, and I completely understand because I've taken on more home duties than I've ever done in my whole life.
oh man, it
Oh
never ends, does
gosh,
it?
I'm the official everything, so it's very interesting. Well, I appreciate you sharing. So we have a mutual friend who advised that you are an expert when it comes to Bigfoot and Sasquatch, and I'll let you define what expert means because we were chatting a little bit before we got on the call here, and you were explaining a little bit to me. So if you wanted to start there, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. I was sharing with you how the reason my friend called me an expert is probably because he is more laser focused on UFOs and aliens. And the reason for that is because when he was very young, he was out for a Sunday drive with
Mm,
his grandparents, which is something they did every weekend. It was him and his sister in the back seat and his grandparents in the front. And they were driving on the same road they always drove on. And he said all of a sudden the vehicle came to an abrupt stop, and
wow.
his forehead hit the back of the seat, the passenger seat, which his grandmother was in, and his grandfather, who never swears, said, "What the hell is that?" And they looked up, and about 15 yards up the road was a alien being
Wow.
that was coming out of the woods, and it looked up and down the road. It looked at them. It looked up and down the road. Then it walked across the road. And he said he remembers that it took its arms and parted the corn and stepped into the corn. And
Wow.
he had another few UFO encounters. So, like Bigfoot or any other cryptids or beings, when people have encounters, they really do get pulled in that direction to research,
That's
and
right.
they tend to get laser focused on that one thing because it made such an impact on them when they had the sighting. So to him, I'm probably a Bigfoot expert. I don't know if there are Bigfoot experts. I think there's a lot of information out there that's kind of got a grassroots philosophy where everybody shares what they know. and people can chew it up and spit it out and take what they choose to believe or not believe. And I have a lot of time to consume a lot of Bigfoot podcasts, and I've spent the last couple years taking local stories and learning that Bigfoot is not this maybe elusive ape that is way out in California or maybe up in the Adirondacks or the Smoky Mountains, but it's closer to our neighborhoods than we could possibly think.
Right.
And that's what is so profound about it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I listened to a few different podcasts and I watched a couple videos today. And one very compelling story I heard was very, it wasn't local to here where I'm located, but it was local to their home. As in they had an experience at their house, and then that experience reoccurred two times after. So it was very interesting to understand that and listen to the pain in the voice, right?
Yeah,
Which helps me understand that this if you're going to have that kind of emotional connection, there's got to be some reality to this. So
right, right.
yeah, I appreciate that. So with that said, I started Adirondack Bigfoot to share experiences, to learn, right, to help the general public learn more about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the culture, and understand that it is a possibility, and pull them in, so that they start to grasp the idea and then do their own research and become a part of the family. So
Sure.
that's my plan. That's my mission. I want to bring it to mainstream because you don't see it often. You do, on a bumper sticker here or there. You may come across a post on Facebook, but it's not mainstream, and I think we can. I think we can do that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely heading there.
Right. Yeah.
I think I don't follow much mainstream media, but I do think I've heard that they have finally got around to, declaring that they are aware of UFOs.
Yes.
And maybe Bigfoot is next. I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
That's right.
I've heard, and if we have time, we can get into them, but I've heard some accounts of people who have had some Sasquatch and other cryptid encounters,
Hmm.
and who have acquired photos or have even ran into one on a road, and have had some government agencies come and put a strong arm on them and threaten them and say, you just saw a bear, don't go telling anybody about this. So
Right.
um, who that is and why they operate the way they do, who knows? But maybe one day they'll decide to lift that and let everybody know. I know there's a debate in the Bigfoot world. Some people think that the government is keeping the possibilities that Bigfoot exists from us because it would hurt the logging industry.
Mm.
But I've heard numerous stories about logging companies that are totally aware that these things are around, and they will hire armed guards or just log in the area and either leave when they show aggressions or signs that they want them out of the area. And I think the loggers would just be adaptive. And I think most humans, if the government came out tomorrow, the president said, "Hey, these things exist. Here's what we know about them."
Right.
I think we people would just adapt because people are very resilient.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a great point. I never even thought about the logging industry. What a big industry that hits home, right? You see everywhere. There's paper mills everywhere. There's trucks full of logs trucking around. Uh there's got to be something going on that they know about.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one piece of the overall puzzle.
Yeah. Um That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing that tidbit because that really got me thinking. Now you got me. I just went left in my brain. So,
Well,
um,
one of the things I noticed about this, John, is sitting on this and giving it a lot of thought
mm,
and changing our perspective as where we, I think, get closer to finding the answers. Um, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. And the more we talk about it, and the more we talk to people, today I was following a little bit of a lead, and I was out in Whitehall. I don't know if you've heard about Whitehall, the story out there in Whitehall, New York. That's in the Adirondacks too. But there's a gentleman there named Brian who had an encounter back in the 70s when he was a police officer for the town. And now there's a Bigfoot festival there every year. The town has had one of the major hotspots in New York State for sightings. So it's pretty interesting to talk to a few people today. And I just found out, I didn't even know there was an ESPN special made on Brian and his story, which is cool.
Oh, I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, if you just in YouTube type in um what did you ESPN Whitehall, New York, and it pops right up first video.
Awesome. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, super cool. So anyway, while I was doing some research, I came across some a place that was selling his book with a signature inside. So I got a signed copy.
Nice.
Excited to read that. Great. So if I was to ask you, what's probably your top three pieces of information that you've learned throughout your research. I think when we first talked, you said for the past 10 years, you've been spending a lot of time really researching and, learning more about the Bigfoot culture. What would be your top three?
My top three ways someone can learn, or my top three interesting parts of the Bigfoot that I've come to learn.
Ways to learn. Let's start with that. That's great.
Well, it sounds cliche, but there are so many podcasts devoted to Bigfoot
Hmm.
out there. And about 7, 8 years ago, I believe, there started being a lot of like creepy pasta, scary storytelling YouTube channels that popped up.
Right.
And they, in my opinion, are not the best way to go. The best way to go, in my opinion, is the podcasts that have eyewitnesses on to come on to tell their story. Um, you can't see them, but you can listen to their voice.
Right.
And some of them have, several hundred episodes. And for the host to be pranking to get that many people to come on and lie and keep their story straight is just very highly unlikely. So I
Agreed.
think they are the best. If you listen to 10 Sasquatch eyewitness episodes,
Hmm.
and you have some are men, some are women, ages from 17 to 80, different income brackets, different creeds, different members of society, and they all say they're driving down the road and they see this, giant of a hairy man cross the road. Well, that's probably pretty good evidence that it's real. So I would say that that's probably the first and foremost. After that, if someone is willing to be open and trustworthy in their town,
Mm.
in their county, and maybe a little bit outside their county into the next county, and if you can find a way to get your question out there, you will find a lot of people who will come forward to you and tell you stories about seeing these things close
Hmm.
by. So, in my opinion, those are the best ways. Years ago, it used to be books. There was, I think, when, maybe over 10, 15 years ago, the Bigfoot world was filled with like maybe a handful of authors
Right.
who everybody looked up to. And we only read their books, and that's what we had to go by. But once the eyewitness scene hit the scene,
Right.
that really opened up a much broader basket because now you can hear from people directly.
So number one, you said podcast. Number two, local stories. Is that what you?
Yeah, in my opinion, yep.
Oh,
And now I know the Bigfoot world is flooded with researchers.
yeah.
I know there's a lot of people on YouTube that will
Hmm.
go out and try to find uh, Sasquatch, and I know
Right.
that became very big after the show Finding Bigfoot, or
Right.
I think it was Finding Bigfoot. Um, but the problem is everybody's experience is different, and you don't know who's really. I when people go out to investigate Bigfoot, a lot of what they experience happens off camera for
Hmm.
some reason, and it's very intimate and real to them, but it doesn't translate to the viewer.
Right.
So if you have one guy who started a YouTube channel and he's 2 years in and he's like, I found these tracks, and last night when the camera was off, I heard vocalizations and I heard someone walking around the tent. That's a lot for that person, but it really doesn't do much for you, in my opinion.
Right. I agree. I'm not interested in those videos. I like more of the storytelling.
Yeah,
With like you said, eyewitness video, eyewitness interview, with a video that includes maybe some footage of the area as he's telling the story, learning a little bit about their background, a little bit about the particular area that they're in,
yeah,
that kind of stuff. What's the history there, so that I can really, be involved in that story as it's being told and understand it.
yeah. That's a good point, John. Good point.
Great. Great. So, was there a number three? So you had podcasts, local stories, and I think there was a
Uh,
three mixed in there, but I might have mixed it up.
yeah, yeah. I think I really those two, I guess,
Yeah.
are the ones that come to mind.
Great. And somebody asked me, they said, "Well, how many books have you read?" And I was like, "Oh boy." I have not read that many books, but I appreciate the question. I'm I'm more of a visual learner, so let's go about it that way. All right.
Well, back in the book day, there was a lot of books. And like I
Mhm,
said, I think there was like a half dozen, maybe 7 or 8 authors who
right.
everybody looked up to, and they wrote the Bigfoot books,
Hmm.
and they were very, ape driven. This is an undiscovered ape,
Right.
and once the eyewitness part of seeing Bigfoot hit the scene, books went away and podcasts uh, came up,
Right.
sprouted up. And now I think people just aren't writing books because just going on the podcast is much easier.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. So you can just listen in, and I love it because I drive a lot, for work. So when I am traveling, that's what I'm doing. I'm listening to podcasts the entire trip. Now, maybe 3 to 6 to 7 hour drive, depends on where I'm going. And then to get back tomorrow morning, I'm getting up. I'm gonna take 3.5 hour drive out. I'll be somewhere for a couple hours, 3.5 hour drive back. It's gonna be a long
That's
day.
great.
So I'll get some, I'll definitely get some stories in tomorrow.
That's
Um,
awesome, man.
yeah, yeah. I truly enjoy it. I really do. My wife thinks I'm crazy because I do love driving. I've been doing it so long for work, so it's no problem for me. We'll get in the car. We could drive the main 6 hours, no problem. So it's good. All right. So I heard you mention, um, what's your top three stories that you've heard, most compelling, or any stories that that you'd like to share that are very compelling, that you'd like to share with the audience.
Which is once I decided that there was enough evidence to support the existence of Sasquatch,
Sure.
I didn't think it would be around here.
Mm,
Like I said, maybe the Adirondacks, but I didn't think it would be in my neighbor's backyard or my backyard. So I was watching some reruns of the show Monster Quest. Do you remember that show, Monster Quest?
I don't think so.
Well, there was a bunch of them, but one's like Monsters and Mysteries, and one of them was called Monster Quest.
Okay.
And what it would do is it would interview someone who saw a Bigfoot or another cryptid or a UFO or alien or anything, and then they would
Okay.
have actors do a reenactment, and they would always give the date and the location that the person saw this thing.
Mm,
And they had a gentleman on there who was driving home at midnight one night on a back road,
Yep.
and all of a sudden, come leaping across the road was this 7 foot tall hairy creature. And there really wasn't anything more to the story than that. But when they gave his location, I found out that he lived about 8 miles from where I live.
Oh, really? Wow.
And I thought, man, 8 miles from where I live, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Now, at the time that they gave this show aired, they said that he saw this about 12 years ago.
Mm.
So I was late hearing about it. And there's a local app that we use here. I don't know if you have it in the Adirondacks or not, John, but it's called Nextdoor.
Yeah. No.
It's a social app that people can use to, like, say your house burns down and you need a place to stay, or you're looking for new furniture. It's a community oriented place.
Okay.
Or if you're looking for jobs, or if you're just moved to the neighborhood and you're looking for some place to network, it's kind of very community specific. So I hopped on that, and I had posted that who I was, and I was looking to see if anybody knew the man who lived on Lebanon Reservoir, is where he was from, who had seen a Sasquatch 12 years ago. And I thought, well, if he's on this app, he'll see it, or maybe someone knows him.
Right.
And I was expecting to get messages that maybe one from him, or maybe one from someone who knew him or was related to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I was expecting to get some messages that were probably like, what are you smoking? Are you crazy? The very first message I got, I opened it up, and it started like this. And it said, if I can remember correctly, I don't know why you're trying to search for these beings, but they want to be left alone. And if you come try to find them, more people will find them, and that will put them in harm's way. And if you put them in harm's way, they can hurt you. They just want to be left alone.
Wow.
Now, that's a very specific reply. That's that's an intimate reply. Like, hey, I know these beings. I'm looking out for them.
Right.
So it was a 16-year-old girl who lived about 6 miles as a crow flies from me, on a road, on an intersection that is the last place in the world I would expect anybody to see a Sasquatch.
Right.
It's not really busy, but it's busy enough. And so we exchanged about a half dozen messages. And she had told me that from as long as she's been alive, since she was a little girl, she had been seeing these, and she called them beings. So for the sake of the conversation, I'll also call them beings.
Okay.
That she had been seeing these beings since she was a little girl. A couple times a year, she would see them, mostly at night. A few times during the day, but mostly at night. And they would be at the edge of her lawn, back in the woods, when she'd go out at night for a walk. And she proceeded, I asked her how she knew they were Bigfoot, and she proceeded to tell me things about them that you would only know if you listened to a lot of eyewitness encounters.
Right.
She said, well, some of them have red eyes. She goes, some of them, they use a hand signal to talk to each other. It's almost like American Sign Language, but it's different. Some of them use language, but it sounds like a foreign language. It's like, it almost sounds like English, but it isn't. She goes, some of them have young with them, and they put the young ones up in the tree. And she tells me that she has chickens, and I asked if they've ever taken her chickens, and she said no. And she went on to explain that the 2 or 3 times a year when they do come around, her and her dad will experience what could be called paranormal activity around their house.
Oh, wow.
There'd be banging on the side of the house, tapping on the windows, the sound of someone walking on the roof. And she said that her father had told her that on a few occasions he had looked out the window and saw what he could only describe was like would be a red fairy flying through the air. They also saw orbs. Now, depending on how many eyewitness encounters you've listened to, I've definitely heard those numerous times. I've heard of people seeing orbs along with Sasquatch,
Mm-hmm.
Sasquatch with red eyes, um, red flying lights, or what could be called red fairies. And I asked her if I could come by and meet her and her father, and then she stopped replying to my messages. And I messaged her over and over and said, hey, look, I hope I didn't offend you, but I really come to love check out the property. And at the time, I was at the mindset where I was ready to go in the woods. If someone said, hey, a Sasquatch was in these woods, I'd go there, camp out, and wait. And what I think happened was maybe she told her dad that there was some guy who was interested in coming by, and maybe her dad didn't want that, or maybe they felt like I was being a little bit intrusive. And then it took me a couple years to put myself in their shoes. And if I had this stuff going on and someone wanted to come meet me and check the place out and go in the woods,
Right.
that might be a little much. So she stopped responding to my messages, which is fine.
Yeah.
And
Well,
the
in
if
her
you go in a go ahead.
in her mind, she may have been protecting her family, right? Thinking about that this could be an
Yeah, it's
issue.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she really felt like these Sasquatch were, she said they were, I think she used the word beautiful beings. And she goes,
Mm.
they don't want to be found or harassed. And I thought it took me a while for that to click in. I'm like, that's fair. That
Yeah.
and she probably, like you said, just protecting her family, not
Yeah.
only her physical family, but maybe her Sasquatch family if she felt like they were an extended version of her family.
Of course. Yeah.
From where this girl's house was, if you went in a straight line, if you went about 5 miles, it was the road that this gentleman from the TV show I saw the Sasquatch cross the road.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Oh,
thought, well, maybe there's a point of travel there.
right.
So I looked on Google Maps, and behind her house, there was a section of woods that was very large for this area. Now, here where I am, there's woods all over. If I went up in my section of the woods, we live on 100 acres, and if I went up and hiked the woods, it'd be about 10 or 15 minutes before I came across a dairy farm or a cornfield.
Right.
Um, so there's a lot of woods, but they don't go for miles and miles. But where the woods she lived at, where this particular patch of woods went a long ways. It was very deep and very long and very wide.
Mm.
And so we live on 100 acres. My parents bought this. My mom met a man in 2004. They got married, my stepdad. And my mom bought this land, and they
Yep.
invited us over here to live with them in 2013. And I had always wondered what the chances are of Sasquatch living on our property. I'm like, well, if they can be at her place where she's much more closer to a road and much more traffic, and her neighbors are like right on top of her, and our neighbors are a little bit spread out.
Sure.
My son at the time was younger, and I would always tell him about the episodes that I would hear of different podcasts, and he would always say, "Dad, do you think Bigfoot lives in our woods?" And I'd say, "Well, as far as I know, I don't think so, because I don't see some of the signs that people say they are there when they're around, like tree breaks or stick constructions." And I used to tell him, I don't think we have any Sasquatch in our woods, but it wouldn't surprise me if our woods were home to a Sasquatch when it was passing through at some point in history.
Right.
In fact, I don't think anybody's woods are off limits when it comes to them traveling. I'm sure they've probably touched more soil than we realize.
Right.
So my stepdad is 72 years old,
Mm.
and he was up at the top of our property one time working by the spring house. We have a natural spring on our property. He was taking down some trees with his chainsaw, and he uh, works at a local school with another gentleman who's also his same age. And he came home one day and he's like, "Dave, I got to tell you, my friend, I've known him for 50 years. He took me aside at lunch today, and he's like, I got to tell you something, Jim." My stepdad's name is Jim.
Yeah.
He goes, "I got to tell you something. When I was young, I was part of a Boy Scout troop, that would go up there and practice our survival building techniques on that property.
Wow.
Says we were up there one day and we had spent 2 days, and on the second day we were cleaning up, packing up our stuff, and making sure we were covering up our fire pits. And we were halfway down the hill when someone had yelled, "What the heck is that?" And they all turned and looked up the hill, and they saw this. He said it was a mammoth, the biggest thing he'd ever seen. The
Wow.
Sasquatch looking down at them. He said the sun was to its back, so they only saw the outline. And he said he doesn't remember if it was a leader or if another scout, but someone said, let's run. And he said, you didn't have to tell me twice. So they ran down the hill. And I talked to him on the phone, actually. And he is the last living member of that Boy Scout troop. All the leaders would have been much older than him, so they passed on, and all the other scouts had died. So at the time I was on Facebook, and I decided to start a Facebook page called New York Strange Sightings. I thought, well, I'm just going to start this page and
Yep.
hopefully get as many people from New York, the state of New York, as I can, who have seen Bigfoot or Dogman or aliens or anything.
Right.
And I had a friend send me a request and became my friend, and he joined my page, and he was on that page for a year until he finally messaged me one day, and he's like, listen, Dave, I've been waiting to tell you this. You might think I'm crazy, which you'll hear a lot of people say.
Right.
You might not believe me, or you might think I'm crazy, but
Mm-hmm.
and he proceeds to tell me how that when he was 16, him and his sister were driving over to town to get some pizza
Yeah.
on a Friday night, and on their way back, they see a huge Sasquatch cross the road.
Wow.
And he said it was so big that he remembers just seeing legs and like the middle torso.
Hmm.
And that road is literally, I can see it from where I'm sitting. It's probably a 16th of a mile from my doorstep.
Wow.
And if you walked a straight line from where that man saw the Sasquatch many years ago as a Boy Scout to that road, if someone said, hey, I want you to walk in a straight line, that's exactly the path you would take.
Wow. That's interesting.
And each of those things on their own, except for the girl experiencing the paranormal encounters and showing some
Right.
favoritism towards the Sasquatch, none of those are really profound, but when you add them up,
Right.
they really bring a lot of weight to the Bigfoot world. And I think that's where we should be looking, is kind of like a graph, like how many people have told the same story with the same words.
Right.
And so then I got me thinking if I should make an attempt to go in my woods and seek them out. And I had heard about people who would sit in the woods and actively say in their mind, I'm here, I'm ready, I want to see you. I have since, personally, this is just for me, I'm not telling anybody else what to do. I've since
Yep.
decided against that because I've known of people who discovered Bigfoot, spent a lot of time in the woods in their presence, and had gotten some disease or had died.
Oh, geez.
Now, I don't know if that is from the Sasquatch. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if the Sasquatch caused that. I don't know if maybe being whatever frequency or vibration or realm they maybe come from, what they're bringing with them,
Right.
overloads the human system. I'm just not sure. So is where I'm at right now is I just keep listening to the stories. And if I see one day, that'd be great. But I'm trying not to willfully go look for them, because I know I'm the type of guy that if I saw one and if it was a peaceful encounter, I would keep going back and back and back.
Right.
I just know
Yeah.
myself. So, you hear about guys who are hunters who are chased out of the woods and they have trauma and PTSD and they're never going back. But if my encounter with one was not like that, I just know I would keep going back because I would want to learn more and more about them.
Absolutely. And those are three separate stories from your local community, correct?
Yeah, all within a 12-mile radius.
Unbelievable. That's
Yeah,
unbelievable. And
go ahead.
is there any relation between the three individuals, or it's completely opposite sides of the spectrum?
Yeah, you have one guy who was a Boy Scout oh, what would it be, in the 50s or 40s?
Hmm.
Another guy who's my age, and then the girl who was 16 at the time we talked. And this was probably about 6 years ago.
And the girl's story is very compelling because you feel like there's honesty to youth, right?
Yeah.
Interesting, very interesting. And this one of the that story I told you I was listening to today was kind of similar to her story. So yeah, that really that really sticks with me a little bit there, because there was some ruckus outside the house, and it was only on the one son's birthday, which was interesting. Um,
I will say this, John.
mm,
Now I don't know, this is my first time meeting with you. I
yeah,
don't know your background. I don't know to what extent
yeah,
you believe everything that's out there about Sasquatch. I don't
hmm,
even know if you are open minded to other cryptids,
yeah,
but I don't hear about this so much in the Bigfoot community. I have heard it a little, but more in the dogman community. Um, I heard about them using people's pets for food.
mm,
Now, on the same app where I contacted that lady that I made the post where that girl replied to me, I have seen in the fall, usually around the end of August, the beginning of September, there is a lot of posts about people missing their cats and dogs.
okay,
And I have lost two cats in the last couple of years in those same months. Now you could say, well, the coyotes are out then. And I live out in the country, so the coyotes could be out then, but my cats are indoor outdoor cats. They come in at night and they go out during the day. And I
right,
had two males that were staying out at night when it was mating season. There was a couple female cats next door they were trying to cuddle up close with. And I know that cats, unlike other prey, um, with their ability to run and hear and see and climb a tree, they aren't as easy as prey
right,
to a coyote, in my opinion.
yeah,
The town where the most missing animals comes from is actually Hamilton, New York, where Colgate University is,
yeah.
and that's a little village. And I've never heard any accounts of people seeing coyotes at all within the proximity of the village, and that's exactly where the cats go missing. Um, so I don't know if the me losing my two cats is a sign of anything. It's probably a far shot to include that, but it's something I always think about when you weigh in the fact that there's a town over from me that is losing every year, losing dozens and dozens of cats, especially during that time.
Yeah.
Now, I did not ask the older gentleman who was the Boy Scout or my friend what time of the year they saw the Sasquatch. Um, if I can get a hold of them again, I will. But that would be interesting to know, like what time of the year they saw it.
Yeah, I'm interested in that too because I wanted to see if there's some sort of seasonality behind when they're active.
Yeah, I would
Um,
imagine. I would imagine they'd have to migrate.
right,
Um, if you and I went camping for a week, our footprint just in our campsite, the amount of weeds we would tamper down and turn
right.
into dirt, and just, I mean, it's noticeable. And for uh, something that big, especially if there's a family of them, I think you would know they're going to be in that area. So it makes sense that they're on the move. That would be my theory, anyways. That they're constantly on the move.
Yeah, no, I was thinking the same thing. And I was also thinking they're so elusive that maybe not, right? So maybe they're adapted to the climate, the weather, and they've just figured out a way to stay away, without being detected to protect themselves and their safety. Um, I guess we'll find out, right, at some point in time,
Yeah, that's
and
true. Yeah.
continue to learn and understand. You brought up family. So I'd like to talk about that for a second. So do you believe that they have family units? They living in a family unit. They mating, having children.
Well, here's why I believe that. In the last 2 weeks, I heard three different episodes from
Hmm.
three different Sasquatch podcasts.
Yep.
One was about a girl who was on the podcast, and she was telling her grandmother's story. Her grandmother had since passed. And she was telling the story that her grandmother had told her, how when she was young, she lived out in the country. I forget which state it is.
Hmm.
And her and her brother would go down by the creek to swim. And she went out alone one time, and she turned around, and there was a very ugly, hairy man standing there looking at her. And before she could scream, it ran over and grabbed her
Oh,
and was running at such a fast pace with her through the woods that she actually lost conscience.
wow.
She said she woke up, and the first thing she saw in front of her was a big female Sasquatch who was crying while looking at her. She said she took a look around, and she was in a cave with about four young ones and the older one who had brought her back. And she had a stomach ache, and on her knee were some roots to help with her stomach pain. And she knew these particular roots helped with stomach pain because her mom would often go get them when they had like constipation and stuff. And she said after a few hours, she called it the dad, the big one, came. And when he came into the cave and saw her, he was immediately angry. And he took the one that brought her there and pummeled him for several minutes.
Oh, wow.
And they chatted and argued with each other for quite a while, yelling and screaming. And the next thing she knows, she falls back asleep, and she wakes up and they're not there. And she hears her voice being called, and her uncles came out with some hound dogs and found her. So that, to me, that's a family unit.
Right. Yeah.
Another episode I heard was of a brother and sister who discovered a small one, their age, and would play with him every day at the same time during the summer. And they started noticing that the parents were just off in the distance behind a tree watching.
Hmm.
And the boy had an old Kodak camera, and he tried to take a picture. They ended up nicknaming this young Sasquatch they played with Willie. And she said my brother pulled out his camera one day to take a picture of Willie. And she said as soon as it made a click, he freaked and climbed up a tree, and the male came out and grabbed the camera and threw it on the ground and stomped on it and screamed at the boy.
Oh, wow.
Um, and then another one was kind of the same. There was a guy who was getting his chickens taken, and he scoped out the scene one night, and he saw a young Sasquatch who was taking some chickens, and he pulled his rifle up to shoot, but he got a sense in his spirit. He said that he shouldn't shoot. And the Sasquatch ran off with the chickens. I think he took three, and they were alive when he took them. And he said about an hour later, a much larger male came back with the chickens. They put them back in the coop and looked at the guy, and then just kind of like left into the forest. So
Wow.
there you have three different things with family
Right.
making up for someone else's wrongdoings and protecting them. So it would be just from that alone, and I've heard way more than that. Just from that alone, those three stories, I would conclude that they have a family dynamic.
Right. Yeah, that seems to be common theme that I keep hearing too. So that's good to hear. And I appreciate you sharing those stories that you've heard too. Do you think that Bigfoot are dangerous?
Well, so I told you earlier that I was a big fan of perspectives and graphs.
Right.
So if I was to sit down and when I say I listen to Sasquatch podcasts,
Hmm.
um, currently as a stay-at-home dad, and before I was a stay-at-home dad, I had a job that allowed me to wear headphones all day while I worked. So all I did was listen to podcasts, and a majority of them were Sasquatch podcasts,
Great.
and they were eyewitness Sasquatch podcast encounters. And when I say I've listened to every episode of every podcast, I've I've listened to about every episode of whatever podcast you can think of about 5 or 6 times. So I've not only been able to hear them, but I've been able to hear them repeatedly a lot and really sit and go through that information in my mind. And 1/3 of the time, it seems that people see something that is really no more than an animal. It's
Right.
crossing a road. It was picking berries. It stole my deer. It had a rabbit in its hand. It was grabbing for a fish in the water. It was getting a drink out of the water. Very mundane, boring, not acting any different than a deer.
Right.
Another third of the time, it's demonstrating human traits. Someone would say it looked human. I had it in my sights, but it looked so human. I thought if I shot it, I'd be accused of murder.
Mm.
It spoke to me. When some people have shot them, the rest of the clan or the family have come back to exact revenge on that person. Now, revenge is a very human trait. If you and I encounter a grizzly bear, if it's protecting its young, it will go ahead and kill us, or if it's hungry. But a bear doesn't have it in it to get back at us, to find us, and to play out a scenario of revenge. That's a human trait specifically to humans.
Right.
Another third of the time, it's otherworldly or paranormal. Like they red eyes, or they disappeared, they cloaked. I followed these tracks and they literally disappeared in this field. It spoke to my mind.
Mm.
It showed up in my dreams. So you got 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Now, I don't know if this might be going more than what you're ready, but I'm just sharing this to explain my theory.
Yeah.
Along with the cryptid in the Bigfoot world, you'll hear a lot of talk about the Nephilim. People are starting to say, "Oh, the Bigfoot of the Nephilim, the ancient giants from the Scripture." And there's a book of Enoch that was taken out of the Bible, and in that book of Enoch, it recounts a story about 200 Watcher class angels. And the Bible says that God created different angels for different reasons. Some are messengers, some were to just simply watch over the earth and report back to God. And there was 200 Watcher class angels that were watching over mankind.
Mm-hmm.
And as mankind started to produce and have more people, they became tempted by women. And long story short, they came to Earth and they took 200 wives. Each one took a different wife, and they had babies. And the result of their angel DNA mixing with human DNA was these giants, these Nephilim. And the scripture says that they were very tall, very big, very fast, very intelligent, with some what we would call paranormal abilities. And they also took 200 of each animal and also did the same genetic test. They mated somehow with 200 of every animal. And the book of Enoch explains that you ended up with these animals that were 1 part animal and 2 parts angelic. And the Nephilim were 2 parts human and 1 part angelic. Now, I don't know if there was any further crossbreeding going on more than that. But if there was, that could be a reason that Bigfoot, when you hear different encounters, you will hear one guy say, hey, this was just an animal. There's nothing more. Flesh and blood. I came across it taking a poop, you know?
Right.
And another guy say, this thing was a human. It looked at me like a human. It spoke to me like a human. This was a human. And you'll get someone else that says, this thing was something more, because before I even saw it, it was speaking to me in my mind. So that's one. I believe it's fairly credible theory, but that's only credible if someone believes that the Bible is of any value, right? If
Right.
not, then not. But so that's kind of my stance on that. And I think if they're dangerous or not depends on the type of encounter you have, and maybe how much of one DNA they have versus another. Remember that famous, what's that, Siege of Habanoa? Have you heard about that?
I have not.
Siege of I think it's Habanoa. Oh, I can't remember what it is, but it was a small mining town. I think it was in California. And this was back in like the 50s or 60s, I think. But this family, um, who were miners,
Yeah.
found that this one Sasquatch was coming around and peeking in the window, and it was taking an interest in one of their teenage daughters.
Mm.
And this guy went out and shot it. And when he shot it, he said three more came out of the woods, grabbed it, and dragged it away. And for the next like 48 hours, they were at war with these things. I mean, these things were hurling basketball sized rocks at their cabin and
Wow.
just creating such a fuss. So that's definitely dangerous. Um, Crossing the road isn't dangerous, but scaling out a full on scale attack on your home is dangerous. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess it depends. I guess it depends, you know. I
Yeah.
definitely hear that they can be very dangerous.
Yeah, well, tying that back to what you were saying about revenge earlier, right? And but other than that, I mean, I don't hear a lot about, instances where they want to harm people. It's usually uh very I don't know the word, but not an experience of danger. Like you may feel like you're in danger because you're in the presence of something that's so large and different.
Right.
So that you have a natural fear to that, but um, from them, being aggressive or anything in any manner, I haven't heard too much of that. Like, I mean, that's a great. I'm gonna look up that story. That's a
Well,
great story.
John, as you get further into this, depending on who you talk to, I'm sure you'll eventually hear some stories. Um, there's a podcast out there that had a gentleman on a couple years ago from the Adirondacks.
Oh,
Him and his wife bought a cabin and some land, and shortly after buying this land,
sure.
they realized there was some. I think they had started experiencing some whooping and some tree knocking and things like that. And then I think the wife saw a Sasquatch one day. The husband was outside working, cutting down a tree, running his chainsaw,
Mm-hmm.
and he's cutting a branch. And the next thing he knows, he's on the ground. And what had happened was a softball sized rock came flying out and hit him in the neck. It broke his neck.
Oh, geez.
And they ended up, it was really traumatic for him. They ended up selling the property, and he was really shook up. Now he's assuming that it was from the Sasquatch.
Right.
So I'm with you. They don't seem to be violent just for no reason.
Right.
They seem to give people several chances.
Mm.
So yeah, who knows what triggers them, and why they do what they do, and do they have a code that they have to live by? Is there some rule that they're not supposed to hurt us? I mean, if as big as they are, and I mean, I heard a story about a father and son who were hunting, bow hunting. They shot a deer. They waited 25 minutes or however long you're supposed to wait for the animal to bleed out. Then they went
Mm-hmm.
and tracked it. They came
Yep.
up over this hill, and there stood this 10-foot tall Sasquatch, and it picked up the deer, and it put one hand on the deer's shoulder blades, and it put the other hand on the deer's hips. And with one move, like tearing a piece of paper, it tore the deer in half.
Wow.
It looked at the father and son, and it tossed them the back half. It put the other half over its shoulder and walked away.
Hmm.
Now, something with that much strength could easily, I mean, not only could it kill us, but it could probably drag us away and bury us miles and miles away. We'd never be found. So
Sure.
they certainly have the potential. Why they don't do it more often is anybody's guess.
Yeah, it just seems I mean just listen I'm just reacting to listening to your stories and your experiences and um the chainsaw seems to be a trigger, right? So maybe harming the forest triggers
Yeah,
them.
that's a very loud sound. I also heard a story about a farmer who was they only have so much time during this summer to get their crops in, and it's not uncommon for some farmers if they have a big field to go out and work till 10 o'clock at night. They'll have these big lights mounted on their tractors,
Right.
and he was out there I think at like 9 o'clock at night harvesting. I don't know what he was harvesting, if it was corn or hay or whatnot. But he said all of a sudden out of the woods came this screaming, and he aimed the light towards it, and it was this Sasquatch
Mm,
absolutely screaming at him and waving its hands. And he ended up getting on Facebook and finding some local Bigfoot researcher types, and they told him that that noise was probably a trigger. Maybe they had young ones and they didn't want to be bothered or something. But I think you're right. The noise is definitely a trigger.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. It sure seems like it, right? The more I listen. That's great. That's great. And I love you adding in that story about the farmer. I mean, and that just makes you wonder. I mean, you can think about that one particular event and think in many different directions. I mean, so the local tracker may have said, "Hey, maybe they just didn't want to be bothered," but maybe he was signaling for something, right? Maybe there
Mm.
was something in the grass, something. Maybe that was their home was close by. There could have been anything.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true. That's a good point.
yeah.
And then you'll
Um,
hear, I don't know if you've heard any yet, John, but you will hear the occasional story about Bigfoot showing um, helpfulness to a human. Rescuing someone who's injured or lost in the woods. I've heard
yeah.
several where a boy was he was in a really bad foster home where he was being abused, and he decided to run away, and he ran into the woods, which was swampy, and he fell into the mud, which is up to his waist, and he just had a breakdown. He was crying and sobbing, and he said he heard this grunt, and he looked up, and there was this big stinky female Bigfoot who was looking down at him with a little bit of disgust.
Mm,
And she grabbed him by his raincoat and lifted him up out of the mud and walked him to the road, and then disappeared back in the woods. um, so they definitely are capable. And again, if you get mad at someone for making noise, if you get mad at someone for aiming a gun at you,
right.
if you perpetrate revenge, or if you help them, those are really all human traits.
Yep.
And I know right now there's a big contention in the Bigfoot world if it's human, or some people are like, oh, don't say such a thing. It's not human.
Right.
And others say, they're all human. But you just can't deny those acts.
Agreed. Yeah. I lean towards Neanderthal. I've gotten a lot of pushback on that.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, when I think about Neanderthal being a descendant of type of humanoid, and then and we in our DNA is we have Neanderthal in our DNA. So I mean,
Right. Right.
could that be Bigfoot or Sasquatch? We don't know, right? Um, something that's been gone for 40,000 years. So it's just interesting to think about. But I would think that there's got to be some sort of attachment to humans. From a DNA perspective, I would
Yeah.
assume, right? I would.
One thing I've noticed about this, John, I didn't see it at first, but even if you don't mean to tie the two together, if you stay in this Bigfoot lane long enough,
Hmm.
it will draw out your life philosophy.
Mm,
If you are an atheist who believes in evolution, you're going to see big through that, and you're going to have a hard time filtering anything else.
right.
And that's perfectly fine. I'm not
Yeah.
judging anybody.
Sure.
If you believe that God made them, you're going to see them through that avenue. If you're going to think that the Watchers, how I said earlier, that they're offspring of the Watchers, you're going to see it that way. And you would think that a topic like this would be miles and miles away from philosophy and God, but they actually are very much tied together because you have to start trying to find answers for why they are doing mind speak or mental talk,
Right.
or why they're doing some things like this. Like, well, if it's a Neanderthal, and I'm not saying that to criticize you or anything at all. I
No,
just,
no,
it's something
you're
I've
good.
noticed in my own life.
Yeah.
Because I've had things happen where I'm like, well, how could this be? And it's a strange thing, and that's why I said, I think earlier before we started recording, the more you learn, it's almost like the less you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Well, they say that the route we're going with technology, that we're going to end up not speaking and speak through the mind at some point. So
Yeah,
maybe
you
they're
know,
on.
Les
Uh,
Stroud, the Survivor man,
Yeah, I do know less.
he
Yep.
uh he was on a podcast, and he shared his he didn't have any physical sightings, but he had been on there to share some Bigfoot related topics that he thought could be pointed to Bigfoot. And he
Hmm.
said that for many years when he was out filming his episodes, he felt like he was being watched,
Yes,
or something was, stalking him.
I
And he
heard that.
said one night he was laying in the tent, and he heard the voice say in his mind, as clear as day, if you want to meet us, we're over on the next mountain range. Come over and we'll be waiting here for you.
Mm,
And he said not only did he hear the voice, but he specifically got the visualization that it was a father and son.
mm.
And he said at the time it was too much for him to handle. So he just said back, no, thank you. And they said, okay. And yeah, that would be like, if you've never had something speak to your mind like that, and you get
Yeah,
that out in the middle of nowhere, that would be pretty intimidating.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, I did hear that before, and I just had the full body chills. Just, just hearing it again. So, yeah, absolutely. Wow. Whew.
I'll share one kind of freaky story with that. I've never had
Sure,
any mind speak or anything, but
please.
uh, when the encounters of Dogman came on the scene,
Mm-hmm.
and people started calling into different podcasts and saying, I didn't see a Bigfoot. This had a canine head, and it had hawks like a dog, but it was standing on two legs, and it was, 7 foot tall and muscle bound, and
Mm.
its eyes were red, and it was evil. And I was soaking up those podcasts because I thought this is even more incredible than Bigfoot.
Yeah,
And for a couple years of my life, I was like, man, that would be pretty wild to see a dog man. And I used to think,
sure.
I would love to see a dog man. And I
Hmm.
wouldn't say I would pray for it, but I would almost pray for it. I would think, man, if it was possible to see a dog man from the safety of my car or something, I would love to do that.
Mm.
And I live out in the country, and like most guys live out in the country, sometimes at night I have to get up and empty my bladder. I'd walk out on my back deck to empty it, and I walked out one night, and it was about 2 in the morning, and it was dead quiet, and it was so quiet that the quietness was actually loud. It was like
Mm-hmm.
it's like your senses say, "Hey, it's too quiet here."
Yeah.
And I started urinating, and I did not hear a voice, but my voice said to me, in what I think was coming from somewhere else,
Mm.
and it said, if you keep thinking about seeing us, you're going to see us.
Oh, wow.
And I walked back in and made a conscious effort from that day to stop thinking about seeing a dog
Yeah.
man. Because you
Right.
never know what type of encounter you're going to have. It could be very traumatic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Wow, you're really laying it on thick here today, Dave. That's
yeah.
you got me going. You got my mind going, my body going. This is great. Um, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I did want to ask you a little bit about any evidence. Have you ever seen any evidence, or did you ever come across any evidence that you felt was very compelling? Like, yeah, that's got to be a real hair, a real footprint, or something that's tangible.
Not no, I haven't, and not on my property, but up in oh, what's the name of the place? It's just at the beginning of the Adirondacks, Fort
Hmm.
something. Um, oh man, I can't think of it now. My aunt and uncle own a camp up in, I think it's called Fort something. It's about an hour from me,
Hmm.
north of Utica.
Sure.
Does it ring any bells? That name, Fort.
Yes, it does.
Um,
I'll figure it out, I'm sure.
yeah,
If you keep talking, I'll pull up my map and see what I could
I think
find here.
it's Fort something.
Fort Drum? Is
And
that Fort Drum?
but my aunt and uncle own a camp, and they have it open. So if any family members want to reserve it for a weekend, they can. And
Hmm.
we go up there a couple times a year and do some hiking. And it's not deep in the Adirondacks, but it's like just approaching the outer perimeter of the Adirondacks. And they have a small path where the community can hike. And just over the bridge, there's this tree that's probably about 2 feet around. I think it's an oak. And right next to it, growing out of it, is a smaller oak. And there's a snap about 8 foot up, pointing in the direction of where the people live.
Mm.
And what stuck out to me about it was that you can tell by the threads of the wood that it was bent and broke when it was alive.
Okay.
And it's pointing in the direction of where people live.
Mm.
And it just always it always stuck out to me as something isn't right there. Now, who knows what it could be, but if somebody did do it, in this tree that's broken and pointed towards where the people live is about 4 or 5 inches around, and the snap is about 8 feet up.
Wow.
So to break something like that when it's alive, um, why would you? It's about 5 feet off the trail into the woods. And
Mm.
you wouldn't even notice it unless you were looking. I just happened to look up and notice it one day.
Right.
And the amount of force that would take um, is just off the chart. So I often think about if Sasquatch is traveling and they do leave signs for each other.
Sure.
And if that's a way to say, hey, this way, there's people,
Hmm.
so maybe stay away from there or whatever. I don't know.
Right. I love that.
But that's the
Um,
only thing I've ever come across. And I've searched our woods many times too for like structures or anything, and I've never seen anything that's really compelling. Um, I have heard that people say when you have Sasquatch on your property, like when they're actually hanging around,
mm,
it will feel like your property is haunted on the outside. Now, you think about a haunted house,
right.
you always hear something moving, you feel something. Sometimes things are out of place, there's just something off. And they say it'll feel like that, but on the outside. Like
Right.
your rakes or shovels might be taken and returned a couple weeks later. You might hear some voices that you think you may hear in the woods, and just something is off, and that's usually a sign that you have them on your property. So that's kind of one thing that I'm always have my eyes and ears open for when I'm outside. Is just listening, and if I hear anything.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point. Yeah, I've heard some of that too, but I've done some hunting, deer hunting in the past, and being sitting in the woods, just sitting there at dawn,
Yeah,
right? And by yourself and just staring off into silence, right? Listening to, when the squirrels wake up, you start hearing some rustling in the leaves, but it's that eerie feeling of always there's something there, there's something there, something's watching me. There's no doubt, right?
yeah, yeah.
That's my feeling, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. That I know there's got to be something else out there. And then one thing I always see is like trails of rocks stacked up, and I've asked people about this, and they've told me, well, that's other hunters marking the path that they're going in, and where they're out in the woods. So you'll probably cross another hunter if you follow that path. Um, but
Hmm.
I mean, like to your point with I never looked up, right? So what if I looked up and I saw branches broke 8 feet in the air? Then maybe you would that would be their point of view, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Interesting.
I just remembered the place Forestport.
Forestport. Okay, yeah, because I
Forest Port. Yep.
Forestport. Oh,
Now, speaking of hunting, have you heard of a guy named Bill Sheehan?
I have heard of this name.
Okay, he writes some books. He takes encounters. He's an older gentleman. He lives
Hmm.
on Long Island. He takes encounters um, through the mail. He's been doing this for years, and he writes books about all the different encounters people write in. And he has an encounter that a hunter from Tennessee wrote in, where he went out really early in the morning. I think like 4 or 5 o'clock.
Hmm.
Got in his tree stand, which was, I think his tree stand was 15 to 20 feet off the ground. And as he's sitting there waiting, he starts hearing owl calls.
Wow.
And he knows they're owl calls because he knows the owl that it comes from, but he
Mm.
also knows that it's something doing a bad impression of an owl call.
Ah.
And it's got him so focused that he's looking through the fog to try to think what in the heck is going on. And he says all of a sudden he feels a little bit of pressure on the heel of his boot.
Hmm.
And he looks down and he says there's the most ugliest face he's ever seen. This huge Sasquatch with huge yellow teeth smiling at him.
Hmm.
And it scared him so bad he almost fell out of his tree stand.
Oh my gosh.
And his theory was, after thinking about it for a couple of years, that the other ones were distracting him so this one could sneak up on him for um, what kind of purpose, I don't know.
As
But
a joke. Yeah.
yeah, when you are out there, and another thing that happened too, we didn't talk about early with the paranormal stuff is
Sure.
he ended up getting really sick,
Oh.
and he ended up falling asleep, and he woke up like 4 hours later,
Mm.
and all he could do to climb out of his tree stand. He got back to his truck, and then he fell asleep in his truck again, and he for like a week he was like just not himself.
Really?
And I've heard that numerous times where people have seen these things or encountered them, and they've gotten like their system is just overloaded.
Right.
But when you are out there in the morning and you do feel like you're being watched,
Hmm.
maybe there's something to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I really think there is. It freaks me out, but I still do it. Because I hope it's a deer staring back at me, right?
Yeah.
Um, all right. Dave, I truly I've learned so much. I appreciate your time. Was there anything else you'd like to share before we wrapped up?
Well, I guess it seemed like I've gotten to know you pretty well. I'd like to
Yeah,
get to
sure.
know you a little more if we have
Yeah.
the time sometime.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
you never know who's going to listen to this, and I would just like to tell people
sure.
that there's probably all kinds of people coming to this uh, table, and you might think Bigfoot is just an ape, and if you say anything more, I'm tuning out. Or you might think Bigfoot's just an alien, and if you say anything different, I'm tuning out.
Yeah.
I ask that you'd keep an open mind, and
Right.
also make sure to guard your mind and heart as you seek out to find out about these things, because there's been some people that have gone, in my opinion, past the point of no return, where they've gone too far, and just interacting with these beings has caused them some type of some darkness in their lives. Not always. Some people have some great things happen. So just don't take it lightly. Take it seriously,
Right.
and don't rule anything out. And remember that, like every other human, you have a paradigm, and that paradigm and philosophy is shaped on by who you are and
Mm.
what you've learned in the world. And be open to the possibility that it could be wrong in some areas, and just go about it slowly and steady.
Great. Great. Um, I couldn't end it any better than that, Dave, and I truly appreciate it. And I would love to chat with you more. Um, and keep in touch, and I'll share my contact information with you, and links and everything else, so that we can keep in touch and keep this relationship going. Okay.
Awesome, brother. It was an honor to be on your show. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Well, have a great evening, and I'll be in touch.
All right, you too, sir. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.